an eye on that, and we will try to answer them as we go. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our panelists now in alphabetical order. So Deborah, you get to, as usual, go last. Our first poet is Robert W. Crawford. He is from New Hampshire in the United States. He is the author of the poetry collection, The Empty Chair, winner of the 2011 Richard Wilbur Award, and Too Much Explanation Can Ruin a Man. He has twice won the Howard Nemeroff Sonnet Award. And he is the director of Frost Farm Poetry in Derry, New Hampshire at the Robert Frost Farm, which includes the Hyla Brook Poets Reading Series, the Frost Farm Poetry Conference, and the Frost Farm Poetry Prize. Our second reader is Dr. Alice Gorman from Adelaide, Australia. She is an internationally recognized leader in the field of space archaeology and the author of the award-winning book, Dr. Space Junk versus the Universe, Archaeology and the Future, published by MIT Press. Asteroid 551014 Gorman is named after her in recognition of her work in establishing space archaeology. Our next reader, Donna Kane, is a writer living in Rolla, British Columbia, Canada. Her poems, short fiction, reviews, and essays have been published widely. Her most recent book of poetry, Orrery, was a finalist for the 2020 Governor General's Literary Award. And Deborah Warren from Massachusetts in the United States is the author of several poetry collections, Connoisseur of Worms, and the book Strange to Say, Etymology for Serious Entertainment, both published by Paul Dry Books, Dream with Flowers and Bowl of Fruit, winner of the Richard Wilbur Award, Zero Meridian, winner of the New Criterion Poetry Prize, The Size of Happiness, winner of the Anthony Hecht Poetry Prize, Ausonius, The Moselle and Other Poems, translation published by Routledge, and that is it. So I am going to kick off tonight with a selection, the oldest selection tonight you're going to hear. This is by Lucretius. Lucretius, from his 6-book Latin hexameter poem, De Rerum Natura. Lucretius was a Roman poet and philosopher who lived from around 94 to 49 BCE. This poem is from Book 2, in which he's looking at basic principles of atomic theory and how things in outer space were formed. And it was translated by Deborah Warren. From De Rerum Natura, Book 2. In no way should it be thought likely, since infinite space lies empty in all directions, and in its boundless depths, atoms in innumerable number fly about in many ways, propelled in eternal motion, that this earth and sky were created alone, and those elements of matter in outer space do nothing. Various atoms in violently colliding, spontaneous, aimless, randomly driven, to no purpose, which eventually combine unexpectedly and hurled together, are forever becoming the source of greater bodies of earth, sea, sky, and the beginning of animals.
We're ready for me?
Ready for you, Deborah.
Okay, I'm Deborah Warren. I'm going to read something called On the Incomparable Isaac Newton, written by Edmund Halley. Edmund Halley was a super fan of Newton, and when Newton wrote the book, the Royal Society had already spent its budget on a non-bestseller called The History of Fishes. So Halley had to fund this, or he was willing to fund this with his own money. And from the introduction, which he wrote to Newton's Philosophia Naturalis Principia Mathematica, this is the beginning. On the incomparable Isaac Newton, his brilliant work in mathematics and physics, the glory of our age and people. The law of the pole, the weights of heaven's mass, calculated by you, formed by Jove, laws which God, creator, source of primordial things, has fixed. The foundations of his eternal handiwork. You open the inner secrets of the sky. No force that turns the farthest orbs lies hidden. The sun on his throne draws all of these down toward him, pulling their starry courses from their straight paths, and allows them to move through the vast emptinesses, but draws to his center in unmoving circles. Now the curved paths of the once feared comets are known to us, and we are no longer awed by the phenomena of the bearded stars. At last we learn why the cause of Silver Moon's uneven steps, why until now she refused to submit unharnessed by numbers to an astronomer, why through the seasons stars leave and return. We learn how Cynthia's changes pull the tides, the flux of the sea, when the breaking waves reveal the seaweed, bare the sand, watched by sailors, and drive the seas in cycles far up the shore.
And I'm up next. I'm reading a poem by Lady Mary Chudley, and she was born in 1656, died in 1710. She was an English poet and essayist, and this poem, From the Song of the Three Children Paraphrased, was published in 1703. Ye glittering stars who float in liquid air, both ye that round the sun in different circles move, and ye that shine like suns above, whose light and heat attending planets share, in your high stations your Creator praise, while we admire both him and you, though vastly distant, yet our eyes we raise and would your lofty regions view, those immense spaces which no limits know, where purest ether unconfined doth flow. But our weak sight cannot such journeys go. 'Tis thought alone the distance must explore. Nothing but that to such a height can soar. Nothing but that can thither wing its way, and there with boundless freedom stray, and at one view 10,000 sparkling orbs survey, innumerable worlds and dazzling springs of light. Oh, the vast prospect, oh, the charming sight, how full of wonder and delight, how mean, how little does our globe appear.
So the next poem in this journey is by Anna Letitia Barbeau. She was an English poet, writer, and teacher who lived from 1743 to 1825. And her poem, A Summer Evening's Meditation, was published in 1773. And when I read this poem, as well as the poem that Donna just read, Lady Mary Chudley's poem, I realized I was naive, but I was just amazed at these women who were really imagining space, imagining traveling through space. And then they both, interestingly enough, at the end, they kind of have to recognize the limitation that they can't really see. And so they have to just sort of imagine it. But that desire to see, is there. And I find that fascinating. And so one thing to remember that at this time, I believe that Saturn is the farthest planet out that they know of. So that she's reached Saturn and then goes beyond. So this is Anna Letitia Barbeau from A Summer Evening's Meditation. Seized in thought, on fancy's wild and roving wing I sail, from the green borders of the peopled earth and the pale moon, her duteous fair attendant, from solitary Mars, from the vast orb of Jupiter, whose huge, gigantic bulk dances in ether like the lightest leaf, to the dim verge, the suburbs of the system, where cheerless Saturn, midst his watery moons, girt with a lucid zone, in gloomy pomp, sits like an exiled monarch. Fearless thence, I launch into the trackless deeps of space, where, burning round, 10,000 suns appear of elder beam, which ask no leave to shine of our terrestrial star, nor borrow light from the proud regent of our scanty day. Sons of the morning, firstborn of creation, and only less than him who marks their track and guides their fiery wheels. Here I must stop, or is there aught beyond? What hand unseen impels me onward through the glowing orbs of habitable nature, far remote, to the dread confines of eternal night, to solitudes of vast unpeopled space, the deserts of creation wide and wild, where embryo systems and unkindled suns sleep in the tomb of chaos. But now my soul, unused to stretch her powers in flight so daring, drops her weary wing and seeks again the known accustomed spot. Dressed up with sun and shade and lawns and streams, a mansion fair and spacious for its guest, and full replete with wonders. Let me here, content and grateful, wait the appointed time and ripen for the skies. The hour will come when all these splendors bursting on my sight shall stand unveiled, and to my ravished sense unlock the glories of the world unknown.
I am Robert Crawford. I'm at the beach on vacation, and despite 5 days of rain, you can tell I managed to get a little sunburn. I don't know how, but I did. The poem I'm going to read is A Grain of Sand by Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. It was published in 1895. She was born in 1825 and died in 1911. And the 4 poems that I'm going to be reading, I chose them because of my interest in the importance of the observer in both science and in poetry. A grain of sand. Do you see this grain of sand lying loosely in my hand? Do you know to me it brought just a simple, loving thought? When one gazes night by night on the glorious stars of light, oh, how little seems the span measured round the life of man. Oh, how fleeting are his years with their smiles and their tears. Can it be that God does care for such atoms as we are? Then outspake this grain of sand. I was fashioned by his hand in the starlit realms of space. I was made to have a place. Should the ocean flood the world, where its mountains against me hurled, all the force they could employ wouldn't a single grain destroy. And if I, a thing so light, have a place within his sight, you are linked unto his throne, cannot live nor die alone. In the everlasting arms, mid life's dangers and alarms, let calm trust your spirit fill. Know he's God and then be still. Trustingly I raise my head, hearing what the atoms said, knowing man is greater far than the brightest sun or star.
Just going to chime in here to remind everyone that if you have any questions or comments, to use the chat feature and we will read them out loud and answer them. Bob, I think you are next.
Must unmute myself. Next poem is Earth by Oliver Herford. It was published in 1898. Let's see if I can get this one right there. Earth. If this little world tonight suddenly should fall through space in a hissing headlong flight, shriveling from off its face as it falls into the sun, in an instant every trace of little crawling things, ants, philosophers, and lice, cattle, cockroaches, and kings, beggars, millionaires, and mice, men and maggots, all as one, as it falls into the sun. Who can say, but at the same instant, from some planet far, a child may watch us and exclaim, "See the pretty shooting star."
I think I'm next.
You are.
Okay. I ought to have mentioned earlier, I'm not sure I did, that Halley, Edmund Halley was, of course, an astronomer. He was born in 1656. This next poem was written sometime in the late 19th century because, let's see, 20th century, sorry. Alice Burlingame was an American poet. Sorry, Burlingame. I keep calling her Burlingame.
Right.
Alice Burlingame was an American poet, and probably unusual for that time. Her poems appeared several times in popular astronomy. So
To chime in, I think it was just to chime in. I think her poem, it was published in like 1906 in Popular Astronomy.
Oh, okay, thank you.
She's quite a mystery woman, but I found her poems in this magazine.
Oh, good, thank you. So about almost 300 years later, I guess, she was musing about Halley, and she wrote a sonnet to Halley's comet. To Halley's comet, thou wanderer out in the vast unknown, when next upon thy path around the sun thou dost return, how many will have run their race who saw thee last, and youth have grown to age, and many changes will be here. Such progress has the mind of man achieved in knowledge of the heavens, 'tis scarce believed. Yet more 'twill know when next thou shalt appear, while thou, returning, wilt thy path pursue for centuries, and many millions will thy coming watch and recognize, until at last thou too shall disappear from view, worn out, dissolved, and scattered far through space. No more shall men behold thee in thy place. I think that's a wonderful poem, anticipating science discoveries in the future, which she hadn't witnessed.
I think it's me next, and we're going to be leaping ahead into the future a little bit at distant from that poem. I'm just going to share my screen. This poem is about Valentina Tereshkova, who was the first woman to go into space in 1963. And the words of this poem are taken, which is by me, I should add, are taken from the actual script of her spaceflight, and represent an attempt to make her voice front and central to this experience. So, Here Now the Sun, a poem for Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman in space. 1, ready for launch. The suit is working well. The inflow stream is working well. I'm ready for launch. I feel excellent. Everything is normal. I'm not a delicate lady. Everything is normal on board. I'm ready for launch. I'm taking up the initial position, feeling excellent. 2, launch. The vehicle's moving smoothly, vehicle's moving smoothly. I feel excellent. Vehicle's moving well. I feel good. I feel good. I see the Earth on the porthole. I feel excellent. The Earth is very beautiful. The vehicle is moving smoothly. I see the Earth in the porthole, slightly obscured by clouds. 3, orbit. I'll do everything that I need to do. I don't understand. I didn't see anything. I feel excellent. The clock is moving. I see the horizon through the observation port. I see the Earth in the observation port. I feel excellent. All systems on the vehicle are working perfectly. Everything is excellent. I hear you perfectly. 4, the other cosmonaut. I hear you perfectly. I feel excellent. I feel excellent, excellent. I'm approaching Cape Horn. At the outer ring, the little star disappeared. Wasn't that you? Don't go far from me, my friend. I can't see the moon. The stars are passing further up. I'm seeing such a bright star. 5, the ships are on their way. The vehicle is responding perfectly, perfectly. Roger, Roger. From the southern point I called him. He's silent. From the north, the same. At our harbour, the ships are silently smoking. Can you hear? For the real boys, the harbour is the native home. Comrade to comrade, they'll always stand together. And far, far away, the ships are on their way, and all who are young at heart stand shoulder to shoulder. 6. Fourth orbit. 19 hours, 25 minutes. I sang songs for him. In the center, such a blue spot. Here now the sun, so orange, not red, not light red, but orange. I'm also feeling excellent. Here now the sun, visible and lit up. In the outer ring, the horizon is visible. It's a very beautiful sight. At first, it's light blue, then lighter, then dark. 7. Greetings to all the women of the world. Soviet women, greetings to all Soviet women. I wish you personal good luck and great success. Women of the world, greetings to you from space. I wish you good luck and success. 8. The flight is normal. Cabin pressure, 1.15. Humidity, 61%. Temperature, 23 degrees. Carbon dioxide, 0.1. Oxygen, 250. Pulse, 84, 90, 100. Breathing, 22. I feel excellent. See you soon in the homeland. I hear you perfectly, perfectly. The flight is proceeding normally. All systems of the ship are working perfectly. I feel excellent. I hear you. I'm waiting. Everything is excellent. The spaceship is working perfectly. I'm in good spirits. I feel excellent. I hear everything well. The flight is normal. All systems on the ship are working perfectly. Pressure in the suit, 1 atmosphere. Humidity, 40%. Temperature, 28 degrees. Carbon dioxide, 0.2%. Oxygen, 200. All systems on the ships are working excellently. I feel excellent. 9. Dear Nikita Sergeyevich. Dear Nikita Sergeyevich, I will use all my strength and knowledge to fully complete the flight till we meet again soon on our Soviet land. Moscow, Kremlin, I am reporting. Dear Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev, the flight is proceeding normally. All systems on the ship are working perfectly. I feel excellent. Thanks to all the Soviet people. See you soon in the homeland. Dear Nikita Sergeyevich, deeply touched by your attention with all my heart. Dear Nikita Sergeyevich, I will use all my strength and knowledge to fully complete the flight till we meet again soon on our Soviet land. 10. Shadows. There aren't enough fingers to block the sun. It's very sunny, difficult to see. At present, a very bright sun illuminating the very high clouds. The horizon above the bright clouds transitions into shadows. The dark sky is visible in the survey viewport. The flight is proceeding normally. I feel excellent. 11. This is Tycho. This is Tycho. Over. 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 This is Tycho. Over.
I'm going to take this moment to bring up the first 2 questions in the chat, which I think are really closely related to both Alice's poem that she just read and the poem that Bob is about to read. So they're from, please excuse me, I hope I get the pronunciation right, Javier Poveda Figueroa. There are 2 questions, but they're related, so I'll read them both. It says that, number 1, do you think that in some way poetry is useful just for describing the beauty of nature? So listening to Alice's poem made me feel that it was the perfect question for that. And the second one is also about beauty. Do you think the connection between science and poetry is seeking beauty? Alice or Bob, do you have anything about either of those?
My mic's still on, isn't it? I think those are really interesting questions. And thinking about that, I think one of the things, like when you're working in the sort of science field, a lot of the stuff that you read, a lot of the language that is used to convey what's going on in space is mathematical or engineering or academic in nature. And it's very, to me, sometimes it seems very thin, like very poor, like it doesn't convey what it is that's out there or how we understand it or can describe it. And I think poetry is critical for maybe not so much about beauty, but about giving those thin engineering and mathematical and scientific words flesh and depth and heart and emotion, like making them something that we can feel and understand and relate to. So maybe that is what's beautiful for some people. But I think if we don't have poetry in there, particularly with outer space, what we're left with is defense and military and engineering stuff. And that's not enough. And it's not enough to make people inspired to protect space either. Hopefully that's some sort of answer.
Thank you. Bob, did you want to add to that?
Oh no, that was perfect. I mean, there's beauty in math and beauty in poetry. I mean, it all, especially if there's certain equations have a certain elegance and beauty to them. It's incredible, I would say. Should I go ahead and read the poem?
I think it's a perfect lead into our next poem.
Okay, the next poem is In the Field. In the Field by the incomparable American poet Richard Wilbur. This was published in 1968. In the field. This field grass brushed our legs last night. When out we stumbled looking up, waiting as through the cloudy dregs of a wide sparkling cup. Our thrown back heads aswim in the grand, kept appointments of the air, save where a pine at the sky's rim took something from the bear. Black in her glinting chains, Andromeda feared nothing from the seas, preserved as by no hero's pains for hushed Euripides. And there the dolphin glowed, still flailing through a diamond froth of stars, flawless as when the Aryan rode, one of its avatars. But none of that was true. What shapes the Greeks or Babylon discerned, had time not slowly drawn askew, or like cats' cradles turned. And did we not recall that Egypt's north was in the dragon's tail, as if a form of type should fall and dash itself like hail? The heavens jumped away, bursting the signature of the zodiac, shot flares with nothing left to say, to us not coming back, unless they should at last, like hard-flung dice that ramble out to throw, be gathered for another cast. Whether that might be so, we could not say, but shrewd our talk a while to words of the real sky, chatting of class or magnitude, star clusters, nebulae, and how Antares huge, as Mars' big roundhouse swing and more was fled, as in some rimless centrifuge, into a blink of red. It was a nip of fear that told us when imagination caught the feel of what we said, came near the schoolbook thoughts we thought, and faked a scan of space, blown back and hollow by our spent grenade, all worlds dashed out without a trace, the very light unmade. Then in the late night chill, we turned and picked our way through outcrop stone by the faint starlight up the hill to where our bedlamp shone. Today, in the same field, the sun takes all, and what could lie beyond? Those holes in heaven have been sealed like rain drills in a pond. And we, beheld in gold, see nothing starry, but these galaxies of flowers, dense and manifold, which lift about our knees. White daisy drifts where yews sink down to pick an armload as we pass, sighting the Heelal's minor blue in chasms of the grass, and strews of hawkweed where, amongst the reds or yellows as they burn, a few dead poles commit to air the seeds of their return. We could no doubt mistake these flowers for some answer to that fright we felt for all creation's sake in our dark talk last night. Taking to heart what came of the heart's wish for life, which staking here in the least field an endless claim, beats on from sphere to sphere and pounds beyond the sun, where nothing less peremptory can go, and is ourselves, and is the one unbounded thing we know. Okay.
Just a quick thing, because there's another comment in the Q&A about from Doug Millard. He wrote, "I liked your poem, Alice, and the jeopardy you introduced towards the end. Those interested in Valentina Tereshkova's flight might be interested in the recordings of her communications." And it went away. But I believe he put a link to archive on a website, which I think we're adding to the resource tab if anyone is interested.
Sorry, Midge, it vanished because I typed an answer to it. So people will find the link Doug posted in the answered column rather than the question column if they want to look for it.
I see. And they, yes, and they're also going to post a link in the resource tab. So it's in the archives of the Science Museum Group.ac.uk. And on to you, Deborah.
Okay. This poem is by Howard Nemeroff, who won the 1978 Pulitzer, written on the occasion, witnessing the launch of the shuttle Atlantis. So much of life in the world is waiting, that this day is no exception. So we waited all morning long, and into the afternoon, I spent some of the time remembering Dante, who did the voyage in the mind alone, with no more nor heavier machinery than the ghost of a girl giving him guidance, and wondered if much was lost to gain all this new world of engine and energy, where dream translates into deed. But when the thing went up, it was indeed impressive, as if hell itself opened to send its emissary in search of heaven, or the unpeopled world, thus Dante of doomed Ulysses, behind the sun. So much of life in the world is memory, that the moment of the happening itself, so much with noise and smoke and rising clear, to vanish at the limit of our vision into the night, the light blue light of afternoon, appeared no more, against the void in aim, than the flare of a match in sunlight, quickly snuffed. What yet may come of this, we cannot know. Great things are promised, as the promised land promised to Moses that he would not see but a distant sight, though his children would. The world is made of pictures of the world, and the pictures change the world into another world we cannot know, as we knew not this one.
We're going to do a little time travel here. I got caught up in answering the questions and didn't read my poem, which would have been about the landing on the moon. So it would have come right after Richard Wilbur poem, but before the space shuttle. So this poem is by Liz Ahl. She's an American poet, and it is about Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon in the 1969 moon landing. And it's called Dr. Rendezvous Takes Communion on the Moon. Buzz Aldrin, Apollo 11, July 1969. Later, the fire of re-entry. Later, depression, medicated by drinking. Later, sobriety, therapy, the final wrestling free from the prison of a hard father's surveilling regard. Later still, past 70, a left hook to lay flat out a moon hoax conspiracy theorist who called him a liar, a coward. Instead of test pilot school, he chose the doctoral dissertation on rendezvous techniques for manned orbiting vehicles, earning the nickname. One part admiration, one part the cocksure bully's jab at any egghead. But when he solved the unsolvable problem of Gemini's required spacewalk, not from brute force or test pilot bravado, but with a scientist's cold, slow methodology, he found a place in that uneasy brotherhood. After the landing, before the one small step, he pulled from his pocket the tiny chalice, the vial, slender wafer, spoke reverent words about the fruit, the vine, and the fruit, drank and ate the blessed sacrament. Where most others saw, could only see, two hopelessly separate and reeling vessels, he knew enough of both math and mystery, of both faith and reason, to work out a slender algorithmic prayer to guide them into alignment, to devise the rendezvous required. Okay, now back from our time travel, back to Donna.
Great. And I'm reading the next two poems. The first one is Tracy K. Smith, and her poem, My God is Full of Stars. She wrote it in 1990. And I'm just reading a section from the longer poem. And that longer poem is in her book, Life on Mars, which won the Pulitzer Prize. And Tracy, as I'm sure many people here know, was the Poet Laureate of the United States from 2017 to 2019. The section I'm going to read is focuses on her father's work on the Hubble telescope. When my father worked on the Hubble telescope, he said they operated like surgeons, scrubbed and sheathed in papery green, the room a clean cold, a bright white. He'd read Larry Niven at home and drink scotch on the rocks, his eyes exhausted and pink. These were the Reagan years, when we lived with our finger on the button and struggled to view our enemies as children. My father spent whole seasons bowing before the oracle eye, hungry for what it would find. His face lit up whenever anyone asked, and his arms would rise as if he were weightless, perfectly at ease in the never-ending night of space. On the ground, we tied postcards to balloons for peace. Prince Charles married Lady Di. Rock Hudson died. We learned new words for things. The decade changed. The first few pictures came back blurred, and I felt ashamed for all the cheerful engineers, my father and his tribe. The second time, the optics jibed. We saw to the edge of all there is, so brutal and alive, it seemed to comprehend us back. And the next poem is by Jay Ruzaski, a fellow Canadian, and he wrote this poem in 1991, and it was about Sergei Krikalev, who was on the space station Mir when the Soviet Union collapsed, and so his return was delayed, and he stayed in space twice as long as originally planned, so he was in space for 311 days. And this poem is Sergei Krikalev on the space station Mir. My name is Sergei, and my body is a balloon. I want to come down. I tie myself to things. My eyes try to describe your face. They have forgotten. My ears echo your voice. I am a star. You can see me skating on the dome of night. My blades catch sun from the other side of Earth. Days last an hour and a half. No one else lives here. My country has disappeared. I do not know where home is. I'm a painter standing back. I watch clouds heave like cream spilled in tea. I see the burning parrot feathers of the Amazon forests, ranges of mountains, or scales along the hide of the planet. The oceans are my only sky. This is my refuge. There is no one else near me. Do you understand what that means? Elena, I am cold up here. I hang over Moscow and imagine you in our flat, feeding little Olga in a messy chair. When I drift out of signal range, I do things you don't want to hear about. These feet do not know my weight. A slow balloon bounces off the walls. I do not feel like I am flying. I want to come back and swim in your hair. I want to smell you. I want to arrive in the world and know my place. Think of me. I am yours, adrift. Let me describe my universe. I can see for years.
I think it's me. I'm going to read a poem by Gwyneth Jones, a Welsh poet who was born in 1959. She was actually the national poet of Wales in 2005. And she wrote a series called Zero Gravity. And this particular one was written while she, or at least about her American cousin who was repairing the Hubble telescope. And this
Sorry,
is called,
Deborah, her name is Gwyneth Lewis, just to correct so everyone knows.
oh, what did I say?
Jones, it's okay.
Oh, it was another Welsh name. Okay. Sorry about that. Epilogue. A neighborhood party to welcome you home from the shuttle's tomb. It's a wake in sunshine. Kids dive bomb the pool. My sense of scales exploded. Now I wear glass beads like planets. In my ears are quasars. I have meteorites for a bracelet, a constellation necklace so bright that despite dark matter in the heart, I'm dazzled. Here and there have flared together. A nonchalant father throws Saturn rings. Dive for them now and find everything. I should say that I particularly like this because it has these double entendres. The wake that dive bombs, the bird, but also there's something of the funerary about this, despite dark matter in the heart. And she talks about an explosion. So that might be a reference to a not so happy shuttle. Anyway, that was Epilogue from her series.
Just a reminder as we come to our last few poems that to please put any questions you have in the chat for any of our panelists.
Okay, now I'm going to read a poem that I wrote that is from my poetry collection Orrery, which was inspired by the Pioneer 10 space probe that NASA launched in 1972. And it just inspired ideas around materiality, consciousness, transformation. And NASA communicated with this probe for over 30 years. And then in 2003 sent its last signal, which is what this poem is about. And some scientists believe that Pioneer 10 is on a trajectory where it could still be traveling after our sun has consumed Earth. January 22nd, 2003, or the day NASA sent its last official signal to Pioneer 10. A budget crunch, but cake for everyone. Abandonment, but words to soothe the blow. Venerable, plucky, bold, deep space and unrequited beeping. Some said the shape of the probe squeezed from the tip of an icing gun was nothing short of lovely. Some said feeble cry and whimper. Everyone had a slice.
Our next poem is Olber's Paradox.
I'm not sure if this is the last poem, but this poem is Olber's Paradox. As many of you know, the Olber's Paradox asks the question, why, if the sky is full of stars, is it still dark at night? And the poem was written by me, Olber's Paradox. The heavens hold more stars than Earth has grains of sand, and given time, each tiny sun combined should make a world where starlight stains the sky bright white, where dark would be undone. And yet the night remains. The dim stars gleam their separate ways, and constellations drawn connect their dots, while under them we dream and sleep, then wake to such a thing as dawn. The universe, expanding since its birth, is larger, older than its light. Sublime the force that keeps this constant day from earth. The same that measures out our years is time, the limitation that provides us night and saves us all from unremitting light.
All right, and I like to finish the reading with this poem by Charles Simic. He was a former poet laureate of the United States. He just passed away this past January, and this poem was included on the space probe Lucy, which is still out there and traveling around doing experiments and carrying this poem. It's included by NASA in a July 2021 mission to Jupiter by Charles Simic. I'm writing to you from a world you'll have a hard time imagining, to a world I can't picture, no matter how hard I try. Do you still have birds that wake you up in the morning with their singing, and lovers who gaze at the stars, trying to read in them the fate of their love? If you do, we'll recognize one another. Well, I want to say thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to all the panelists. If you have any questions any last questions, please put them in the Q&A tab. There also is a resource tab with a link to cambridge.org/outerspace if you're interested in purchasing a copy of the book with a discount code that you can use. Also, if you've enjoyed this session, please consider joining the BSHS to support the activities and attend future events. You can find links to find out more about the BSHS and how to join the society on the conference website and on bshs.org.uk. So if anyone, no other questions, I'll say thank you very much.
Midge, there's a raised hand.
Oh, a raised hand. I don't.
Javier, I think.
We can allow Javier to speak if you would like to.
Sure.
Okay, let me just grab the participant and let's talk. Javier, you should have the power to talk now.
Sorry, I think that I pressed bad my option, so I'm very sorry for that.
No problem.
Thank you very much for your talk. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining. All right, we are done here. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Midge, and thank you, the BSHS, for having us.
Yes, I second that.
And me as well.